Hello, folks. Welcome to a bonus episode of Science Fiction Book Club. My name's Abu, and as always, I'm joined by my chemring partner. We got to eventually stop making that joke, but here we are, by my chemring partner, Obssa. And,
That's right.
Obssa, I think both of us felt this after we finished The Left Hand of Darkness. We didn't want to leave Le Guin's world yet. We wanted to
Absolutely
stay and explore more of Le Guin's writings. And that's where today's bonus episode came from. And today's particularly special because not only are we diving into an excellent short story by Ursula K. Le Guin, but we are also joined by a very special guest from a very special podcast, Cody from the Hugonauts podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
And thanks for having me. This is fun. We never get to talk about one short story at a time, or we don't. I guess we could. It's our choice. Maybe we should do more of that.
Yeah, short stories are nice. Obssa and I recently covered Ted Chiang's Exhalation, and it was kind of nice to just do like one podcast episode on one short story at a time.
Totally.
Yes, we did the collection. We did both of his collections, but we haven't done really get into it. That's nice.
Yeah, it's fun to kind of get into it story by story.
Mhm.
So today we're here to talk about The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. We were chatting before we started recording. Cody, you were joking that it's just a 4-page story. Are we even going to have 30, 40 minutes of conversation about it? I'm confident we will, just because Obssa and I are gabbers. But it is a short story, and it's an interesting one. I mean, it's hard to even try and summarize it, but essentially Le Guin is painting this picture of a presumably utopian city called Omelas, and we are told about halfway through the short story that in order for the utopia to remain, there's a catch. One child has to be kept in captivity, and everyone knows about it.
Yeah. And not just captivity. That's
Not
right.
just
Not
captivity,
just captivity.
right, Obssa.
Like squalid, miserable conditions that kind of also underscore kind of the cruelty of the people of Omelas.
Absolutely, right. And that is the sacrifice, the contract that the citizens of Omelas have made in order to maintain their utopia. Cody, I'm curious, what was your sort of first initial reaction to reading the short story? What was your initial takeaways and feelings?
First, Omelas, Amelas. How do we know how to pronounce this?
Yeah.
I ended up, I was on Omelas as well, but that's a lot of vowels. Where do you go with that? Otherwise, I think Le Guin makes an interesting point. Two things stuck out to me immediately when reading this, because I had never read it before, surprisingly. So it's fun to be invited and have something fresh. Her point about stories, about evil being really banal, being normal, and not being as interesting as joy, but then reading through that and realizing that she's also making a point about storytelling, which is it's not interesting without conflict. And so you're reading this story and you're like, okay, this is great. And yeah, we could do this, but like what? This is a meme. This is over already. What's here? And then you get hit with the child in the dingy small broom closet, basically cellar, who's living in its own filth and is losing language and its muscle mass. And it's just so sad. It just hits you like a brick. And then you get the purpose of this story. I think what she's doing here is like, where should we, like she points out in Dispossessed, where should we apply? There's some level of suffering that is necessary for civilization to exist. How do we distribute that equitably? That's, no one really knows the answer. It's a philosophical question. So I think she points it at, she like makes a really interesting point by diluting it to this scale of just one person. Is this worth it? One versus all. We never see something as literal as that in real life.
Yeah.
Those were my initials. How about you all?
Yeah. I mean, kind of lots of thoughts here. But to just kind of to react to something you said. I do really appreciate how Le Guin has kind of made us complicit as readers of the story. That we need there to be something beyond what otherwise feels like kind of a blasé, happy-go-lucky set of town folks, and the story is satisfying because we get what is effectively a really horrific twist at the end. So there's some kind of interesting commentary about, I think, us as readers, apart from kind of the ethical and philosophical questions that are raised in the content of the story. I have read this story before, and it still kind of hits for me almost the same as it did the first time. And I was texting Abu about this the other day. I still remember kind of how like much of a visceral gut punch it was to get to the twist, and yeah. I think that's like what's so effective about this story is that it takes what is otherwise like a pretty, could be like a pretty sanitized, somewhat abstract philosophical question, and it makes it emotional, and you can't get away from the kind of, essential nature of that in the human experience. Mm-hmm. As soon as you attempt to, I don't know, kind of construct a rule-based like ethics system, or just to somehow or the other, separate ethical conduct from the felt experience of it in the actual world, I just think you like risk a lot of things. And this story, I think, does a really good job at like really highlighting that fact, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what really, I loved this story from like paragraph 2, I was like so completely sold. Obssa had recommended that we should cover it because he had read it before. And what really sold me immediately was Le Guin's like really snarky voice at the reader. I really enjoyed Le Guin kind of being like, oh, you don't believe me, bitch? You don't believe me that Omelas could be like a real utopia? Fine. Right. What do you want in there? You want trains? You want flying cars? You want, you want like orgies in there? Let's throw orgies in there.
Right, you could have, what was the drug? Drews?
Yeah, drug. Right. It's a drug, and like,
it does all of the drug things with no drawbacks,
with no consequences. Yes, you want that in there? Like, let's throw that in, huh? Like, what do you want in your utopia? And again, like, this is less a narrative short story where Le Guin is like sort of actually constructing a reality, and it's like you said, Cody, it's like it's a philosophical question. It's a allegory. It like I don't know that we're supposed to look at Omelas and the picture that Le Guin paints and literally be like, this is a real place. Would I live in it? Would I participate in it? To me, it's just like Le Guin is asking, what do you think a utopia is? And what do you think it would be required for that utopia to exist? Would it be one child suffering? And I think there's some really interesting literary sort of meta commentary there too, because she, like you said, Cody, there's like some thoughts from Le Guin just about storytelling, about like, oh well, pain sells and dystopias sell, and joy is kind of boring. People don't want to read about joyous cities where everything's perfect and everyone's having a great time. So here you go. I'm going to throw in a kid that's getting tortured.
Right. Is that what you wanted? Everybody?
Is that what you wanted?
You got what you
that's
wanted.
That's like the tone of this whole story. Right. Is like, is that what you wanted? It's like real aggressive, and I kind of liked it.
Yeah, totally.
Yes. And just really setting the tone immediately for breaking the fourth wall. You're part of this story, and inviting you in, and it kind of seamlessly makes you join in a kind of a masterful way. I mean, she's just such a great writer. The other thing that I think about now that we're talking about this is how another interesting point about narrative and how we view the world and how we emotionally feel about ethical issues. She's made an interesting point that when she tells you about just one child who's really sad and the specific details of that child, that is so much more emotionally appealing to the way our brains are structured, and that's it's so much more powerful than saying they committed genocide on 1 million people who lived in this city before and buried them underneath the city and whatever. Like, just that one, that it's fascinating that one child can make you feel so much more injustice and angry at this society than could a number,
Yeah,
even if
absolutely.
it's a million individuals. So that's an interesting point she makes about the narratives of the world.
Yeah. Do you guys think that we in the real world exist in a kind of like Omelas at scale? Or do you think it's unfair to make that comparison? That Omelas is just a thought experiment. It's not actually commenting on reality. Because there's suffering in the world, right? There's suffering. There's children that are being hurt all around the world. Industries abusing the environment. Like some of the luxuries that we have in our day-to-day lives is thanks to a lot of stuff happening in the shadows that we turn a blind eye to.
Yeah, I think the point is that that's inevitable with any sort of, I mean, a civilization, society, whatever, like social construct. Two plus people will create a dynamic that requires some sort of trade-off, like in Omelas. And I just think it's interesting when we see it distilled down to that one, the most pure kind of train tracks trolley issue you could possibly do. One person's extreme suffering versus an entire civilization's enjoyment of life. Is that still worth it?
Yeah.
What about you, Obssa? Is it a fair comparison to say Omelas is a mirror to reality?
So yeah, I mean, like I do think it's it's an interesting, fair comparison, and what it does that I think, Cody, you pointed out a couple times is it makes it, it puts it on a scale that you can't help but actually like think about in really kind of personal terms. You can't really personalize the suffering of a million people. You can think about the suffering of your cousin, or like a single individual. And it's, I've shared the trolley problem with, like my parents and other people in my life, and
just like dinner table conversations, or
yeah, totally.
Hey, mom and dad,
that's good dinner talk. That's the good stuff.
No, good point. No, but it's interesting because there are different versions of it, and the most basic version is still kind of like a little unsettling, where it's like you have the power to like flip a switch, and the train, will divert to the track with only one person instead of 10 people or whatever the case might be. And I've kind of like observed with everybody that I've shared the trolley problem with for the first time, they get the story, and they kind of end up falling on the utilitarian side of sacrifice one for the many, and then as soon as you substitute the lever with like pushing somebody off of a bridge, and that ends up stopping the train to save 5 people, then it becomes a lot more kind of uneasy of a dilemma to try to kind of slice through. And then as soon as you say like that one person is your mother, or your sibling, then it's like a child becomes just in a basement. A child, And so I think that is part of the power of this story, is that it has that same kind of sleight of hand where, it's able to make you kind of reframe and understand this moral conundrum from a really like an actually human perspective.
And I think with the ending, I'm sorry if I'm jumping your questions list here, but the ending is some people, one at a time, never groups.
Right.
I think that's important. Decide to walk away from Omelas, which is the title of this story. And they just walk into the wilderness. And Le Guin says, we don't know what that looks like. We don't know where they went. We can't even describe it. And I think she points out that like we've done this for so long, and it's so part of our systems that we can't even imagine it as humanity. We can't imagine a place where we don't make this trade-off.
Right.
So that's really interesting. Just like we could, it's possible they're doing it, but I can't write that because I have no idea what that looks like.
Right. Oh, that's interesting.
And that I think was actually the very hopeful message in this short story. Mm-hmm. Like my takeaway, like having read the short story and reread it and sat with it and seen what other takes are out there, I'm walking away actually pretty inspired by the story because exactly like you're saying, Cody, I do think the title is telling us perhaps what Le Guin wants us to take away. The ones who walk away from Omelas are the important ones. They are the ones who are bothered by this trade-off that their society, their utopian society is making. And they're so bothered by it that they choose another route. We don't know what that route is. because nobody who's in this society in Omelas can imagine another route. They've committed to this binary. We get utopia, child suffers. And I actually think this story could be read as like an interesting deconstruction of the idea of joy, because Le Guin says, like, you can't imagine joy without pain. Fine. What do you want in your utopia? What, like, she kind of like throws it back at us, and is like, okay, here's some pain here too, because this is what you expect from your stories. This is what you expect me to write. But the people who leave Omelas, I optimistically think they are not leaving because they're turning a blind eye to the suffering, but because they're choosing a different route that we can't see. Mm-hmm. Humanity hasn't chosen that route yet, to actually choose joy without the trade-off of pain and sacrifice. Maybe that true utopia does exist somewhere.
Yeah, I was interested. I looked it up before I was reading. Have you all done Dispossessed yet? The Dispossessed?
I haven't covered Dispossessed yet.
Okay.
No.
It's a great novel. I like Left Hand a little more personally. But Dispossessed is amazing as well. And I was interested to see, I looked up before this episode. So she wrote Left Hand of Darkness, 1969, published. This was published 1973, Dispossessed, 1974. So it's right around the same time. And you could see a lot of these ideas that she's explored and Dispossessed at a larger scale. I mean, it's essentially a story about two planets that are close by. One is socialist, communist. I'm sure I'm messing up which ist it is, so sorry everybody, but you get the idea. And one is a capitalist society, and it's this one brilliant guy who lives between both, and it's kind of her way of exploring both of those economic systems and pointing out, which I think she does brilliantly, that there is no perfect system, that they both have their issues. I mean, she's socialist, she likes that. I think she's trying to kind of point you that way, but also saying, like, yeah, there's a lot of like sharing issues and people being annoyed with each other and stuff that still happens. There's no way to, which I loved about the novel, because it's realistic instead of trying to say, like, make an argument, really.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of the ideas of Omelas translate into the Dispossessed, and that and are imagined more fully. How do we spread out suffering that is required for civilization fairly over everybody? What is the right answer to that?
Right.
Yeah.
So sorry, that's just a Dispossessed plug, I guess. I don't know why.
Yeah, honestly, I'm already sold on Le Guin, and I was definitely going to read it.
Yes.
But for sure, I'm like running to the library after this.
Yeah.
To go back to your point, Abu, about the people that walk away and kind of how we assess them. I guess first I'm curious, Cody, if you share the kind of optimistic outlook on those who walk away. Like, are they meant for us to somewhat praise? I guess is the question.
I don't know how I feel about it yet. It was so ambiguous that I'm not sure. I think that's kind of the ambiguous. It's what makes the perfect story to stay in your mind forever. When there isn't resonance, when you don't have an ending that's like, okay, we're resolved. Right. My brain can move on. Your brain can never move on from an unresolved story, and you will always think about it based on the context of your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I guess my initial thoughts were that I felt that was hopeful. I saw what she was trying to do, and I think the thing that most interested me about it was that they all had to leave as individuals, was the point that she was making. That's what I spent the time thinking about, was the point that she's making, that like, even the people who saw this, there were so few of them that they had to really, really break with everything they've ever known to go out and alone. They couldn't even find a pal to head out with, because it was such a rare thing to break from this comfort and this utopia. And so I didn't really think about it optimistic versus pessimistic, but now that you ask, I guess optimistic.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Tough to start a podcast when you're one who walks away from Omelas. Can't find
you just don't
know. You're out here solo.
a lot of monologuing. No, it's interesting. I mean, I guess I too felt like there's a lot of ambiguity there, and that's obviously the strength of a story like this one. You will continue to revisit it in your mind, as the context of your life changes, and a different light will be kind of shed on it as the years progress for you. I don't know that I took it so optimistically. I guess at least at this point in my life, I still find them perhaps like worthy of criticism as much as praise. And, part of that is, it's kind of like voting. When you're part of a democracy, you can abstain from voting, and that's kind of what it feels like they're doing here. Like they're walking away. They're not casting a vote on how the society of Omelas should be run, which, if you don't care about the outcome, then that's totally fine. Like if you don't care which way the society goes, then abstain, and feel, morally fine, I guess. If you do care about the outcome, then, abstaining is kind of tantamount to voting against your interests in a sense, and so that's kind of where I'm left with, a slight bit of misgiving around those who walk away, and less of like I am, in your shoes, I would feel like the moral superior in a sense. And it's interesting. There's been a ton of commentary on this short story. The science fiction author N.K. Jemisin has written, I don't know if you'd call it a rebuttal, but she's written kind of a companion short story,
like a response.
Called "The Ones Who Stay and Fight." And it's kind of interesting. I'd suggest, checking it out. I don't know. I don't want to spoil it in any case, but I think similarly, it's kind of confounding, and you're left with this question of utopia, dystopia. Like, what are we describing here?
But is the thrust of her argument that you should stay and try to change Omelas? Of Jemison's argument?
That is, I think, the core premise. There's still a twist to it that unsurprisingly she includes to kind of wrinkle that question. But it does introduce a third choice, which is, it's not, you're not stuck between the binary of stay and leave. There is, a stay and be complicit. There's also stay and fight.
Right.
Yeah.
And Obssa, I think that's a fair argument, because even my optimistic view of the people who leave go out and find a joyous path that's different from Omelas, that doesn't help Omelas, though. There's still a kid here suffering, right? Like, maybe you go out and you found the city of Fomolas or something, but Omelas is still operating as it always has. And so I think I'm interested in reading the Jemison short story that's a response to this, because I think there's a strong argument to be made for staying and trying to change your current circumstances, the society that you are born into.
Right. I also think it's a little bit of a, I guess the people who are leaving, we're meant to believe are, they're doing like their own episode of Alone or something. They're going to just go survive in the wilderness by themselves. And like, they're going to, if you're looking at the ethical implications from like a one person society, they're just taking all the joy and suffering themselves. They're taking all of it. And so that's, I guess, ethically okay, but it also is just unreasonable as a human. We just don't do that. We live in societies. We don't do well as individuals. I mean, some rare people do, but that's just not, I don't know if that's too worth thinking about.
Yeah, there is and Cody, I think you've kind of mentioned this throughout the conversation, but there's like a scale issue here, right? Like it's like Omelas is also technically just one city. What about the country that Omelas is a part of? Like, once you start scaling up, does the suffering also need to scale in relation to the utopia, And I think that is where the question kind of gets muddy, and maybe where this short story falls short is like, we can take this allegory of one city and we can talk about the suffering of one child, but can that be applied to multiple cities, to multiple countries, to the world, to a spacefaring society across planets? Is there a better way to live without suffering when you continue to scale up the number of people that participate? I think that gets muddier.
Yeah. there's a lot going
There's
on
no easy
in these
answers,
4 pages. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
In 4 pages, right? Le Guin has just like left us befuddled for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
What a great story. Cody, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This was really fun.
This was great.
Yeah.
We should do it again sometime. Your insights were
Would love
great.
to.
Before we say goodbye, I'd love for you to share and let our listeners know where they can find your work and the wonderful sci-fi coverage that you're putting out there.
Yeah, we are the Hugonauts. We are on all platforms. We do video and audio. You can find us at the Hugonauts, spelled, Hugonauts. Hugo Award and astronaut together. Unfortunately, not the Calvinist movement, the Hugonauts, with the UE that gets auto-corrected all the time. But you'll find Brent and my faces. You'll find Brent and my faces on a little spaceship, so it shouldn't be too hard. And we discuss some sci-fi, now fantasy novels as well. We have a lot of lists of genres, stuff we like from those genres, and some author interviews as well. So
amazing. Where do you, once people find your show, you've covered a lot. You've been doing this for a long time. What do you think is a good starting point for people to jump in? What's one of your favorite things you've covered?
I've really enjoyed a lot of our author interviews. Those are fun. And I think, we've covered so much. I think it's just kind of come for a book that you've already read that you love. The format of our show is like a pre-spoiler review, and then we recommend other books, and then we have a post-spoilers where we talk about stuff like as if you've read it already. So it'd be good to come and just look for a book that you love and see if we've talked about it, and watch that. And otherwise, we're essentially a positive recommendations podcast. We don't do a lot of dunking on things. We just do like things that we really both enjoy. Sometimes it's just one of us, but that we genuinely want other people to read. So
Nice.
Well, that's amazing. The world could use more of that energy for sure. Great. Thank you again for joining us, Cody, and this was such a blast.
Yeah.